Okay, so we'll call to order the February 3rd meeting of the Narberth Planning Commission. We have a quorum. I circulated the agenda beforehand. So the first item of business are announcements and updates. Starting with the chair's update. I don't have an update this evening. Nothing new business. If there's any questions, I'll entertain questions, but I don't think there's anything else to discuss. Second item of business would be the staff update. Montgomery County Planning Commission staff.
So a couple things. First, we're still working with the Lower Merion regarding the active transportation plan. It's moving along. We're supposed to be scheduling a few more meetings, or some more meetings regarding the network in a little while. Our GIS crew is working on the dashboard, and so hopefully sometime soon we'll have something. We'll be presenting something tangible. However, I will probably not be that person presenting it. I'm leaving the Montgomery County Planning Commission on March the 4th. So Mike Yarkowicz will be taking over as the community planner from the county.
Thank you, Tim. Any other questions for Tim?
So what's going to be doing?
I'm going to be working for the city of South Bend.
City of what?
South Bend, Indiana.
They must have offered you a juicy job. Leave such a wonderful place like this.
I'm going to be working in their development and community investment department, and which is essentially their planning department. But it looks like a very fun job. They like when it comes to form-based codes, I like to hold them up as one of my favorite examples of them, because they did one in 21 that has turned out to be very, very just fun to read in terms of just links and everything flows. So, but
Congratulations.
yeah, good luck.
I really enjoy fighting Irish.
Ooh. Can I just please say that?
Okay, well, they teach classical architecture in Notre Dame, actually.
Classical everything.
That's what I would. So, thank you, Tim. The third item to discuss, Jennifer sent out the meeting minutes from January via email. Hopefully you had a chance to read them. Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt January meeting minutes? Or first, does anyone have any suggestions of edits or revisions, corrections?
I received comments from Todd, which I incorporated.
My comment was, it should be clarified that Jim Cornwell will continue as a member of the HARM, even if he's not there representing NPC.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second? Seconds. All in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Second item of business is an application to adjust the lot line of 10 Sabine Avenue. The borough did provide printouts of the letters of review for the application. You should have in front of you. I also emailed them earlier today, and some of them are. And looks like we have a plan set being distributed as well.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Is it okay if I sit? Present from here, is that okay?
As you like.
Okay. Bill Dion with the law firm of Silverang, Rosenzweig and Holtzman. I'm here this evening representing Ken Brasso and Casey Humberg, who are the owners of 10 Sabine Avenue. As the chairman mentioned, we are here seeking a lot line adjustment with the property at 243 North Linwood Avenue. And also with me tonight is Timothy and Holly Manzoni, who are the owners of that property, who have have it under agreement sale to sell approximately just shy of 6,000 square feet to my clients. I also have Chris Doherty with me tonight, who's from Shock Engineering Group, who prepared the plans. From a practical standpoint, the lot line adjustment is the main zone of the property is very deep, if you can see from the handout that was just given to you. They front on Wynwood Avenue, and the property itself is just shy of 400 linear feet deep, and where the Grassos and Humbergs front on Sabine Avenue, and the rear property is, the rear property line is almost, approximately 15 feet off the back of their house. So the Grassos and the Manzones over the last couple of years have kind of had an informal arrangement where they can use the rear yard. But as discussions went on, they came to an agreement to sell a portion of it. From a zoning standpoint, there's no zoning issues. It actually brings the 10 Sabine Avenue more into compliance because it's right now right up against the impervious coverage limit. So we'll actually, not bring it more into compliance, but make it a more viable lot and provide for some recreational activities in the rear yard. There's no intentions, as we sit here today, to do anything with the property. Right now, it's just the dog and the children, and the ability to have a little bit of a backyard to play. And I can get into review letters if you like, or if you have any individual questions, you can let me know how you'd like me to proceed. We're going to do review letters.
Well, does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I just have one question.
Con?
You said you aren't going to make any changes. Do you intend to take down any trees?
That's not the intention, no. There's no intention to make any physical improvements to the property whatsoever. If you're back there today, it's kind of an informal area. Over the years, as they've been using it, they've cleaned it up. It was a lot heavily overgrown, so it's now kind of a nice grass setting, so it's a very nice backyard. They want to keep it that way. Just they want to legally own it.
Is there an intention to put up a fence?
No, there's not. There's currently a fence today that is around I guess 2 sides of the property, and the fence that would divide the property line between the Grassos and Humbergs and the Manzones has been removed as they've had this informal agreement. So right now they would just be able to own it and be able to use it as they do today. No more questions. I can go through the review letters fairly quickly. I think they're fairly straightforward. There's a review letter from Yerkes dated January 23rd, 2005 by Kevin Walsh, really is the building code official and zoning officer, noting that there's no comments. Both lots as reconfigured comply with the zoning. There's also a February 3rd, 2025 review from the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Really, there's no technical comments. I think they just point something out with regard to fences, and if there's ever fences in the future, it would have to comply with the Borough Code, which is understandable. And then the third review letter is dated January 24, 2024, which I think was meant to be 25, and it was authored by Eric Johnson from Pannoni Associates. And I can go through this fairly quickly. From the zoning comment number 1, just to confirm with the code officer, there's no zoning violations, which the previous letter documented. Number 2 is pointing out that the property will actually be split zoned because the property is in 2 different categories, but since there's no planned improvements, it doesn't create any issues for the owners. Subdivision land development number 3, confirms it's a minor subdivision. Number 4, there's a couple of cleanup items on the plan, very minor. The only thing I would ask for a waiver is 4E. Since it's such a minor subdivision, they need to provide the aerial photography for 200 feet around, if that's something that the board would consider as a waiver, just to avoid that necessary additional cost in making a 2-sheet plan. But that's a request that we would have. We acknowledge that we'd have to put up survey monuments or pins anywhere there's 2 corners. Similar to 4E, there's 6. We'd also request the waiver for the right-of-way, because it's a minor subdivision on Wynwood Avenue. And then getting into 7A and B is some cleanup. 8A, I obviously have to get confirmation from the borough solicitor, but since there's no planned improvements, I would doubt there'd be a security agreement. We did order a title report, so we'll be able to document if there's any deed restrictions. And then I guess 8E, since there's no improvements, I guess wasn't sure with the sewage planning module, I would ask for a waiver there. Seemed to be an unnecessary step since we're not building anything and creating additional sewer. So we'd rather avoid the process of having to submit for an exemption when there's nothing to do, but I'll leave it to the board's discretion. So I guess technically we'll comply with the review letters, but asking for waivers from item 4E, 6, and 8E, if the board so inclined. I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions about the review letters?
I'd like to ask the borough engineer about the letter Mr. Johnson wrote in regard to the sewage module, why that would be required for an application like this, and what's your opinion about the request for a waiver. I'd also like to ask you what your opinion is of the request for a waiver for the right-of-way. I forget which one that was. What would you advise?
It's number 6.
So with regards to the sewage, the sewer planning module, we included that because we've noticed that DEP has been, they've wanted these modules to be submitted with any and all kinds of land development applications that they see. So, for something like this, they would probably see it and they would review it, and more than likely they would say that they don't need to move forward with actually submitting or applying for any additional EDUs or any additional sewage to go through the property. But it's more of a formality. So if the board wanted to accept a waiver for that, then I wouldn't see any issue with that from my end.
You said land development, but this is not a land development. They would even request that for like a minor subdivision?
Okay, yes, minor subdivision, yes.
And then the easement, they're requesting a waiver of the extension of the
Actually,
easement.
I think they're saying the code is the requested dedication.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so that again, that's something that we note on the plans as well, just as a, to point it out that it is.
Is there
part of
any
the-
place on that block face where it's more than 40 feet, or would this,
I'm sorry?
are there any other parcels set back to create a 50-foot right-of-way
Are there any other parcels on the street?
on Wynwood?
That I don't know.
So this request for dedication, though, would apply to the owners of the property on Wynwood, not to the owners of the property on Sabine. Is that correct?
It would have to apply with both the property on Sabine and the property on Wynwood.
Well, the dedication is for Wynwood Avenue, or
The letter.
Wynwood Road. Sabine is already 50 feet wide. It doesn't need to be wider, does it? According to the plan.
I'm sorry, yes, you're.
Yeah, so the question
Yes,
is,
yes.
does the
It
property
would just
owner
be-
on Wynwood
You're right, yes, it would
Road
just
need
be
to
for-
dedicate 10 feet to the right-of-way
Correct.
at this time?
Correct. Yep.
And what would the consequence be to the borough if that didn't happen?
Whatever the situation is, today, is how things would move forward in the future. So if the borough decided that they wanted to take that additional right of way, then I guess that would allow them that extra access if they ever needed to widen the road. It would be one less property that they would have to obtain that additional right of way for.
No other question.
Any other questions or comments?
I have no objection to the aerial frontage waiver.
Does anyone object to, okay, well, let's just go through the request then. So 4E, does anyone object to waiving, we are not a board, we actually just recommend the
Yep.
council. So does anyone object to recommending to waive the aerial photography and neighbor blocks requirement? No objections. Item 6, does anyone object to waiving the dedication of 10 feet of the property on Wynwood Road? No members object?
I do.
Okay.
I would object at least until I heard from the solicitor as to why we wouldn't do that.
Why wouldn't require 10
It's
feet?
in our code, so we require it, so why wouldn't we require it? I feel like I would rather hear from the solicitor about that.
Does anyone else want to hear from the solicitor about that?
Well, this will be a recommendation to council, correct? So the solicitor will be at the council meeting. We want to write it into our discussion.
So how do we phrase that? What do we want to say?
Well, depending on how everyone else feels, I mean, the commission could say, we don't have an opinion on that, or we, you know, on this particular request for waiver, because we feel it's a matter for the solicitor to determine.
Well, isn't it more a matter of policy? I mean, it's in the, it maybe says that, I don't know what it says. If it says they can require a dedication because to match the street plan or not, but the question is, let's say that for the sake of argument that the dedication could be required, would we waive that as a borough regardless, as an unnecessary?
I think we defer to the solicitor.
All right.
And we write it that way.
Does anyone else, any further discussion on this? All right, nobody wants to speak in favor of. All right, so the council we would recommend that, if I understand correctly, the sense of the commission is that we would recommend the council let the solicitor speak to the dedication of the right-of-way, and we won't take a position one way or the other.
That's what I'd support.
Yeah, any further discussion?
Seems reasonable.
All right, item 8E, sewage facilities planning module, for an exemption from Pennsylvania DEP code section 450.21.c, paragraph 5. The applicant is requesting that we recommend a waiver from this. Are we able to waive that requirement?
That I'm not sure of. I haven't seen it get waived by the planning commission in the past. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that it couldn't happen.
Is this like essentially an analysis of sewage capacity or something?
Correct. Yeah. So if this application was proposing like a single family dwelling or something similar to that, then that unit would have additional sewage that would be being used in the borough's sewer facilities and things like that. So there would be like a test done, or trying to think of the word. A test done to see that the additional sewage will not interrupt the borough's sewage capacity or their sewage systems. Since there is no planned development on the lot, does it really need to have, like, do they really need to submit this? I would say yes, as a formality for DEP, and we can let DEP tell them that they don't need to do any further analysis. But can the planning commission waive that requirement or recommend to waive that requirement? I don't see why they couldn't.
I mean, what would the applicant be asked to do?
They would be asked to submit a plan that shows, basically what we're looking at now. They would be asked to describe what the proposed development is, which in this case there isn't any, and they would essentially say that there's no additional EDUs or no additional sewage that would be put into the borough's sewage facilities.
All right, does anyone have a recommendation from the commission to council on waiving item 8E or not?
I would be okay waiving it if we can waive it, since there's no structure there.
And the structure were to go there, they would need to.
Okay.
I think that we just say that in light of the fact that there's no development plan for the property, we suggest that they could waive that requirement.
We could say we take no exception
Yeah.
to waiving the requirement.
Yeah.
From our
Yeah, that's a
perspective,
good
since
way-
there's no
That's a good way.
construction plan.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I see no consequence to the borough of not doing this.
It seems like an unnecessary step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For what?
I agree.
All right, so everyone's in favor of the commission saying we take no exception to waiving 8E. So we will recommend to waive 4E. We take no position on 6 and recommend they let the borough solicitor speak to the right-of-way dedication. And we take no exception to waiving 8E. And otherwise, we would recommend to permit the lot line change. Right.
Yes.
Do we need to vote on this, or does that conclude the business?
Well, I mean, I probably should have a motion in the vote.
All right, so the way I phrased it, all in favor, or I'll take a motion to vote on the closing out the lot line adjustment of 10 Sabine Avenue.
I'll motion.
All right, so to just comply with the borough engineer's review, subject to what we just discussed. All in favor, is there a second?
I'll second.
Todd seconds. Okay, so the motion is on the table to forward those recommendations to council. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good night. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item of business is another subdivision request for 425 and 427 Grove Place, which is splitting a lot back into a twin house. That was formerly a twin house. Is the applicant here to speak to the application?
My name is Patrick Vescrell. I'm the equitable owner of 425, 427 Grove Place. Right. Essentially, what the property is, at one point it was a twin. Essentially, all the utilities and services are for 2 houses. At some point along in the early 2000s, the lot was consolidated to one. So what I'm seeking to do is reestablish the lot line for 2 dwellings. And for that, I'm going to Christian Young Engineering to speak on the letters.
Good evening. My name is Chris Young. Would it be possible to put the plan on the screen, or would it be better
Is
if
it
I
already
just...
loaded to the laptop, the PDF?
Good question.
I did that one.
Or is that
Yeah,
Save Line? Is the other one also in there, or just Save Line? I mean, if you
Did not see the other one loaded.
Is it on the flash drive?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you have a flash drive?
I do not have one. Is it, can you do?
Put it on the flash
Oh,
drive.
okay.
I don't know who this is.
I brought a plan that I can show you. I just thought it might be better overall. As that's being pulled up. As Patrick said, there's no new improvements planned here. It's an existing home that has 2 families there. There used to be a lot line separating it, so it was a twin. That was removed, so it was 1 building with the 2 units. He'd like to reinstate that property line, which was actually shown on the survey as an extinguished line because it was still written in the deed to say where it was. And so really all we're showing is that plan. He does have some plans to renovate the buildings on the interior, and so there's nothing shown on this plan. We have review letters from Yerkes that doesn't require any comments at this time because there's no improvements. From the Montgomery County Planning Commission that doesn't ask for any changes, and then some comments from the borough engineer that we would comply with. We do have the same right-of-way request that the previous project did, and so if the borough feels it appropriate to not widen or not ask for that additional right-of-way for these streets as well, then we would ask for the same waiver. I'm happy to go over each comment if you'd like. There's not really much to it since we don't have any comments.
Okay, well, we can go through the letters, I guess. So the Montgomery County Planning Commission,
We only bring up just note that it is the right-of-way to the old Rockland Avenue Bridge. Just make sure that nobody's planting in the right-of-way. That way, in case that bridge is ever restored in any form, there's no real argument of where does it begin and end. And then the other thing was just kind of encouraging the borough to continue to permit the subdividing or combining of house or building type, like between, to fit whatever the needs of the owner are, so whether or not it's 2 units, whether or not it's a duplex, or whether or not it's 2 separate units, whether or not it's a duplex, and just making that easy is always encouraged, so.
okay, any discussion of the MCPC letter? All right, the zoning officer's letter has no comments. And the borough engineer's letter, all right, so the applicant is requesting a waiver from item 3, dedication, 50 feet on Rockland Avenue, right away towards 50 feet, which I presume they would only have to do half of, actually, so it'd be like 5 feet. But the, currently the street doesn't go anywhere, so there's no bridge. And you'll comply with all the other items?
Yes.
Including 6E, the sewage planning, facilities planning module.
Yeah, I guess the way I plan to address that is to send an email to DEP and have them confirm that there's no planning required because there's no improvements, it's already 2 units.
Is it 2 units today, or is it still one house? Or?
Today it's 1 house. Well, essentially the party wall, with the structural party wall is, they created a hole in it. So, but we'd have to we'd have to obviously address that.
So yeah, you would have to firewall, but is it that's a construction project, is it, you think it has 2 sewer laterals? Not that it really matters.
I think I believe that there are 2 sewer laterals and 2 water mains as well. Gas is still up. I'm not sure about the gas lines, but
any discussion of the borough engineer's letter? All right, so if we follow the previous format, we would say that we could phrase this as that we take no position on the dedication of the right-of-way, same as the other property on Rockland Avenue, recognizing that it's not currently a through street. And we take no exception to waiving the sewage facilities planning module if council chooses to do so. But it sounds like you'll try to get EP to send a letter saying it's not necessary.
Right.
Does anyone object to that phrasing? Right.
I
I do have a question now about the zoning officer's letter. Actually, so I just want to, so the house is currently functioning as one house.
Yeah,
There's only one dwelling unit,
correct.
even though in the past it had been two.
Yeah,
And so that means also the garages in the back, those are existing garages?
yeah, they'll remain.
And the garage for 427 Grove, is that large enough to serve as a functioning the garage for a car?
I believe so. I mean, just looking at it.
We usually do that at Passman. What's that? But is that where your one parking space would be, the garage?
Yeah, and I do believe that there's just in the driveway itself, there's room for another car. So potentially two.
Okay.
On that side. Obviously, the others is larger.
Is parking permitted on Rockland Avenue?
I don't remember. I can review my photos because I have to take a number of them. I think so.
I believe it's
The parking is permitted on Rockland.
Yes. But there's two spots on the 427 side. There's the garage, and there's the driveway, and there are people who occasionally park on Rockland.
Okay.
So the question I have, I guess for Kevin really, is I think when you say since there's no construction or therefore there's no zoning issues, and I'm guessing you're referring to the provision of the code about non-conforming structures that says when no alterations or additions are proposed, a lawfully existing principal building may be continued to be used, although it does not conform to the provisions of Article 4. Is that the basis of that? Because basically, I mean, it is the case that the subdivision makes one of the houses non-compliant with the minimum width. Unless there's something like that you are seeing.
No, from the parking perspective, yeah, you're right. It's a non-conforming use that's not changing there. If this right-handed lot that we're looking at, which I believe is at 427, I'm sorry, I can't zoom in on my phone. I'm sorry, on my computer. Yeah, 427, that parking configuration wouldn't be allowed if it were new. It'd be within the first lot layer, but we're allowing the non-conforming use to continue there. And Pat, you actually might have just said something about parking kind of in that curved area of the driveway. Technically, that's not allowed, just so you know. That would be surface parking in the first lot layer. Yeah.
Kevin, I was asking about the minimum building width.
Yeah, that's an existing non-conforming as it relates to the structure. And again, it previously existed. This was similar to the 119 North Essex project where we weren't going to require them to create an addition in order to comply with something as if it were a new lot.
Or get a variance.
No. This is, again, similar to 119. If you're familiar, that was the one that went to the dentist's office on Windsor in Essex. They had a non-conforming frontage as it relates to like a storefront, and the code would actually require, if we went back and forth on this, the code on paper would require an addition to be brought to bring the building out towards a front setback. And I know it's a different property, but it's the same idea that we wouldn't have to be creating a new addition just to support a code section when there's no construction.
Right. But you can't subdivide yourself into a nonconformity, can you? Isn't that like a basic rule?
So the buildings aren't being touched. So basically anything dimensionally as it relates to the actual structures themselves don't comply. It's all the actual lot area requirements. So it's lot areas and setbacks, impervious, building coverage. Dimensionally, those things aren't applying to the actual structure itself if it's not being touched.
The lot dimensions compliant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like 3 inches. That's the only issue.
The MCPC letter has the parcel map back. So Todd, is your question?
Well, when we had that problem with 119 Essex, we actually modified the code so it was explicitly allowable what they wanted to do. It didn't rely on an interpretation. I mean, it seems silly to not approve a project because it's off by 3 inches, and so that's not the issue. The issue is whether, I mean, I'm always interested in whether our code needs to be fixed because it's not clear on something, you know, like people should.
Yeah. I think this gets back to kind of the overall discussion we've been having about nonconformities, whether it relates to uses or structures or dimensional requirements when there's no construction. I do think that that's something we need to revisit this year just to make it a little bit more clear or put it in its own section.
So is there a recommendation to change the code?
Nothing that we haven't discussed already.
Right.
I just wanted to understand Kevin's reading of it so that we can understand in the future how the code might need to be changed to make this easier and more clear for everybody.
Right. Any further discussion on the letters? So is this the will of the council that the commission that we would recommend to council to approve the lot split with the waiving of the we take no position on the right of way width, and we take no exception to waiving the DEP sewer planning module. And did you request any other waivers? Yeah, so that otherwise we would recommend to allow the subdivision.
So moved.
All right, Heidi moves that be the will of the commission to forward to council. Is there a second?
Second.
Ralph seconds. So all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We will inform council as such. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Fourth item on the agenda is that there has to be a member of the planning commission on the Historical Architectural Resources Board. Review board, sorry. The HARB. With Jim Cornwell stepping down from the MPC, we need to send a different, designate a different member. I'm not exactly sure formally what the process is, whether that's a council action or not, but either way, would anyone like to throw their hat in the ring to discuss if they would be willing to serve as the NPC member for the HARB? Todd shuffle some papers.
Tuesday.
They meet next Monday, I think, as far as.
Monday after.
Yeah, they're Monday after the NPC usually. All right, no one's volunteering. I will volunteer then to serve, since nobody else is volunteering.
I have in my notes from last month that you would need to submit your request to council and then they would need to appoint you.
Yeah, I will let them know, or I will pass that along. They can, I think they can meet, next week without an official member if they needed to, but. All right, so that's what we'll do. Item 5 is an update on long-range planning and our work plan for the year in response to Borough Council. I believe Todd Bressi may have an update for the commission on recodification of the zoning code.
A very brief update. which is that I've been kind of working on how to do this. I've gotten some guidance from Councilmember Gaudini, and what I'd like to propose, I think by next month I'll have a lot of work to show people, and so I'd like to ask if we can have about an hour at our next meeting to review the work to date, and I can submit it ahead of time so you all can look at it, and I can kind of walk through where we are. Also, Adam, I think about that time, I'm not sure before or after our meeting, would probably be good to arrange a follow-up check-in with the staff, with Kevin and Maggie in particular, to show them what we're working on and get their input at that point. So that's what I'd request. Time on the agenda next month, and then either before or after the meeting, a meeting with the staff to kind of discuss progress.
You said you want to be on the agenda of the MPC next month, is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd just like to have about an hour set aside for that.
1 hour to discuss the zoning code,
Yeah.
followed by meeting with staff. Okay. Any comments for Todd or further discussion, the zoning update? Okay. We'll put that on for next month. And item number 6 is public comment. Yes, by the way, before we, is there any
There was no one
Zoom
online,
call? No one's waiting.
so
All right, so there's no public comment. Commissioner Heidi Boson suggested that perhaps we should have public comments earlier in the agenda, since everyone has to sit through the entire meeting. And we did do all of our business without taking any comments from the public on these applications.
I only suggested having it first, because sometimes our meetings do go long, and people are sitting in the public waiting for their opportunity to talk. And I thought it might be nice to just give people an opportunity to speak first, and then if they wanted to stick around, or somebody wanted to stick around and address items that we discussed after, they could have a second public comment. I think that seems right.
It's a good idea.
I guess there's another way of looking at it too. It's like if we had someone waiting and we knew what they wanted to talk about, like if they wanted to talk about one of these 2 items that we had on our agenda, we'd know where to slot them in, sort of let the presentation go first and then they'd have some comment afterwards maybe. But I don't know, like maybe.
You don't know that.
You don't.
We have historically taken public comment after each point.
Have we?
At least when it comes to presentations on proposals for like subdivisions and other conditional use approvals, we'll take public comment after each section, and then have the public comment at the end for any general commentary.
I mean, I do know that planning commission, council seems to have public comment early in the meeting. I mean, their meetings do go long, so that is kind for those waiting. We don't go quite as long, but still, it's a thought, if anyone thought they could just move it up front after the initial.
I think, first of all, Jennifer's right. It even says so on our agenda. Public comment on agenda items is taken during discussion of those agenda items, which I think is good. Because if someone's coming to say something about a particular project, they can say it before we vote, and that makes sense. I think, in terms of business, like, what I would try to do is if I saw people I didn't know in the audience, I'd just ask them what they're here for, and if I got the sense,
It's a good idea.
that it made sense to do it first, we would do it first, or, I think we could probably be very flexible about that, Adam, depending on, if we're anticipating a long meeting, then we could just let them go first if it's a short meeting.
So there's no required sign up?
No.
So you
not
can
for us.
control that.
The only thing I want to do is make sure applicants don't wait a long time, because
I got
public
blindsided one time by like 100 people. There was one meeting where 100 people showed up, so that was
I guess,
Oops.
would it make sense to maybe unofficially have someone who is responsible for coming 5 minutes before every meeting to just see what public is in attendance, to ask them, in case there is an unaffiliated public comment?
Yeah, so what we could try to do is, we could try to, if there's members of the public present, we can try to sort that before the meeting, but we can also clarify on the agenda, we can add public comment on any item that we're gonna take an action on, just to clarify that there would be an opportunity to speak to anything that's of concern.
Yes, that's good, I'm sure that, yeah, we can handle that way. Just so as an agenda item, it's written that way.
And I mean, we could just move the general public comment to the beginning and say if it's not related to the business, that, you know, then they could dispense with it first.
Yeah.
So they could leave if they really wanted to bring something to us.
Sounds good.
Reasonable. All right, does anyone else have any unplanned, or that's the full agenda, so we've run.
I have one comment, one question. We're talking about the codification right now, but there were other items that we were interested in discussing, like, council had suggested that we narrow down, that they wanted us to address only some of those, and I thought one of them was the 5A district.
Well, the second important topic besides recodification was, let's just say, housing. And depending on who you are, that means something different. And when I asked the council president about the 5A district, and by that I meant the areas outside Haverford Avenue and Norworth Avenue, you know, where Citizens Bank is, where post office is, all those, call them the collar, you know, properties. His direction, as he wrote an email, was council would be fine with us looking at those insofar as they were related to affordable housing. That's what he wrote. So to me, that means we should look at it, right? That's part of our effort to look at the topic of housing. So I'm sorry to be circuitous, but
No,
I think
that's good. That's good to clarify. I just wanted to. I'm frustrated. I don't know how many other people are frustrated here, but I know certainly the public in our general Narberth neighborhoods, people are concerned about the downtown and the business mix and the empty storefronts and the potential development. And I don't know if we have any authority over that with council or make recommendations to council regarding our concern on that topic. I think it's a hot topic that we may not have any authority over.
we did, in our letter to council last May, flag that as our most important topic.
So number one priority, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
And the response was, don't worry, we have that under control.
Well, that's, the response was, council agrees with MPC's assessment that further fine-grained work on this topic, quote, requires expertise far beyond what MPC or MCPC have to offer, end quote. Therefore, this does not seem to be a fruitful topic for MPC to tackle at this time.
And that was written when?
Back in May, I think he said.
So do we know if it's been on council's agenda to discuss?
I mean, I don't see any reason why we couldn't remake that recommendation to council.
Okay.
That we're not, you know, we're concerned, but the question is, what will we do about it? And I think aside from expressing concern, there's not a lot, because we don't own property, we don't lease property, we're not responsible for any of that. And
We did talk about recommending bringing in consultants who might be able to find tenants in a more aggressive way.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and I think it's a whole issue of the property owners and what they're charging for rent. And does council have any way to get property owners together? I mean,
Correct me if I'm wrong, sorry to interrupt, but aren't all the empty properties, are they all one owner?
Well, many of them are.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons it's a hot topic for council and not us. But I still wonder if, yeah, maybe we can do nothing about it. Maybe we just need to speak at a public council meeting or write to council again.
We had also talked about at one point, just when we update, like when we're doing the recomplications, just making sure that the list of businesses outlined for approved use or not approved use is updated to reflect all types that the county, the MCPC tracks. Because there were some that we were missing from our code at the time that could be discussed and included or excluded from being allowed within the, so we could at least put that in as part of our effort to show that we're reviewing
Focusing
it and
on it,
making it a priority without being
Yeah.
a priority. And then use that as a way of re-recommending to council.
Yeah, so the priorities, I mean, so, okay, so, are we sending something in writing or are we not? What is our action of it on that then?
Well, I guess we could have it in the minutes that we discussed, raising that topic, the importance of that issue again. Maybe that maybe is all we can do at this point.
I mean, I've heard informally that there may be like resources from the mainstream program the borough can tap into. I don't know what they are or what would make that happen. So I know that there are people at the council level who are trying to find resources to help. But I think the problem is, we have a very immediate situation, but the strategies communities put into place to deal with these often require kind of institutional structures and tools that we don't have. Like community development corporations or ways of assisting with business financing and, that don't just happen in 3 months.
And I'm realizing that one of the issues is parking. As much as I know you've done multiple parking studies, it's also true that businesses are afraid to come in here because they don't think there's enough parking. So if you wanted to have like a mom's grocery store or something for American Family ones, where are they going to park, especially if we get these residential developments that are going to use a lot of the parking lot in the back. So it's kind of it's several issues that need to be addressed. In order to inspire businesses to come, it's parking, it's funding, it's allowances on property taxes, or getting the property owners together to talk about it's incentives just to bring in businesses.
Right.
But yeah, expertise.
Shared parking.
Shared parking. I mean,
parking is such a problem.
And what's happening at the Citizens Bank that, are we going to allow that to be fully built out and then we lose that parking lot? So, I mean, it's issues like that. I don't know how much we can do because there are laws, state laws that allow developers to do things for their lots.
Even if it's shared parking, that takes tools. Although we have certain things in our code, it also takes kind of a compact among the property owners to participate, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, as you walk around the borough, there are plenty of parking spaces. It's a question of how they're utilized or if they sit vacant often.
Right,
for a very
so
long period.
can there be some kind of arrangement made amongst all the property owners to share those lots for nighttime use, daytime use,
Correct.
apartment use?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, I did a form-based code for Haddonfield about 25 years ago, and all I heard was from the merchants was parking. We went out and we measured and counted parking. We did it on Washington's birthday. I mean, and there's always tons of open spots within a block of the main street. And the other thing we found out, which I don't think is true of Narberth, but it was true of Haddonfield, that all the inner parking spots were actually used by the merchants and their staff. And they were complaining about parking.
Right.
So parking is often a management problem. It's not quantitative, and like I said, it means, I think we do have zoning tools that help. It's more a matter of having the kind of someone in leadership who's getting the property owners to kind of realize that this is a shared asset and we have to try and figure out how to do that.
So would that be something we would talk with Maggie about?
Of course, yeah.
Because honestly, Bill Martin was the person who got all the property owners together when he was here. And that, he was very good, John.
Let's get him out of retirement.
Well, we can't do that, but we can probably draw some of that,
Yeah.
side of him into what's happening with borough management now. I think it's been a missing piece.
And I think that, another thing we might do is have someone who talks to the businesses and find out who's vulnerable and why they're vulnerable.
Exactly. I mean, why can't there be a meeting with all the business owners and all the property owners?
Or just go talk one by one. Like, I went and bought some flowers in Amaranth about 6 weeks ago, a month ago, and they were closing that day. I hadn't known that.
Oh, wow.
I said they were moving to Wayne. They went to Wayne. I said, why are you leaving? And they said, well, our business model's changing a little bit. We're doing more weddings and things like that. And what we're concerned about is being able to get all of our trucks in and out when they're doing construction. We noticed they're starting construction across the street, and we're worried we're going to be able to get in and out. Now, first they're in Lower Marion, so that's a little exception, right? But it feels to me like that is actually a solvable problem.
Yeah.
And then I asked one of the borough council members, did you know Amaranth was leaving? And they said no. So whose radar is up, right? So another thing is to make sure we're really aware, not because someone just is doing it casually, but as a structured thing, which businesses are vulnerable to what.
So is
maybe someone's labor, maybe someone's parking.
So maybe we could go businesses to businesses and have some kind of question.
I don't think that's our job. I think it's the job of someone who's really seasoned in retail.
So you want to hire a consultant?
That's what we've been
A
saying for
downtown
years.
business
Yeah,
manager.
we've been talking about that for years. And there is money in the budget for it.
Someone who knows how to read between the lines with these little businesses and knows them inside out. And
Yeah.
All right, so essentially the Narberth Planning Commission remains concerned about the state of downtown and the business climate generally.
And potential new development that is on the horizon. That isn't even the American Family Market Road,
Well,
but beyond.
I think seems to be happening too quickly with the development that's already approved, so, I mean, I don't want to be negative, but I just,
No,
it's
it's
but
a reality.
it's, yeah, you need the, I
It's
think
not like we do that.
financial conditions are,
Yeah.
so I'm not sure that, and the other priorities that, so we can, I don't know if we need to, are we saying that we want to send something, just draw attention to the minutes that we continue to be interested in having a downtown plan
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a plan, just
for the business,
more
business retention.
A direction.
Business
direct
development.
engagement with our business community to retain what we have and find businesses, problem solve, the challenge of getting businesses in here.
The other priorities were affordable housing.
Right.
So I think we will continue to probably work on that this year in terms of, strategies and tactics the borough can take to encourage affordable housing. More affordable than it otherwise would be
Oh, absolutely.
within the borough.
Lowercase support.
Especially with the
Right,
development.
it's basically just what would allow for people to create housing units that would be less expensive.
And we're not just talking small.
So I think
All options can be discussed.
They don't have to just be 400 square foot
It was
studios.
a housing technology study.
I think where that stands is, I talked, the council member who's most interested in that is Michael Galdini, of course, and he has this kind of knack of just quantitatively analyzing stuff, just like that. It's incredible. But I think we have to be careful because the issue of housing means different things to different people.
Yeah.
And some people think, well, how can we encourage smaller houses? Some people think, how can we encourage houses at lower price points? Some people think, why can't the houses they're building now look like the ones we already have? And these are all opinions that I don't think any of them sort of has a kind of majority weight, but all of them have a voice, like in council. And what Michael's trying to do is figure out where in council is there a sweet spot for different kinds of things to work on. And what he told me last time I talked to him about it was, he thinks by the time we sort of have a recodification idea in mind this spring, he'll have a sense of what we could work on specifically about housing, and that we can meld the two efforts at that point. So, and Tim has done a lot of work on we had some questions from the public about just data about house prices and things like that. And Tim has been digging into that. Are you going to be at our meeting
I'll be at the meeting in March.
next month? So maybe we could consider having you talk about that. I would leave that up to you.
It's fun patterns that are also playing out in Philadelphia right now too, so.
The challenge with that is that we have to be really careful in presenting data like that to the public, so that it's like really crystal clear, and we're not, they'll take that, we have to be able to, like, whatever we say the data means, we have to be able to say it in a very defensible way. And so I would want to make sure whatever is presented is really, really airtight, in terms of its analysis method and the databases that are used and the conclusions that we feel we could make versus things that are more speculative. Those are, it's important not to oversell what we learn, so. Bless you.
And then the final thing was Montgomery Avenue, traffic calming. And what we're going to do is work with Lower Marion on the corridor study, but we maybe should also, we'll see, we need direct engagement, but best to have a cooperative approach with Lower Marion, but otherwise we may also, I guess, make our own recommendations.
Yeah, that's an area that is probably going to develop too at some point.
I think, well, we can look at it. There's some barriers to development. And then also, frankly, like in terms of development, right, where you see empty parcels today, that you can build on them, but what you might be easiest to build on them is $1 million, $2 million single family homes.
Well, except that Montgomery Avenue is a place where you could have apartment buildings, which would be good.
I think with the,
It was brought to my attention that the apartment buildings are conditional use without any conditions specified in the zoning code right now.
yeah, so I think that's something we would address like at the next step. But I think with Montgomery Avenue, wasn't the inclination to wait until, isn't there a grant out, Tim? Wasn't there a grant for another project besides the active transportation?
So that's kind of in references the Lower Marion and Narberth jointly put for a Safe Streets for All grant. I believe it is to study Montgomery Avenue and identify improvements that can be made.
The whole length.
It's
a length
of the township.
From Philadelphia to Upper Marion.
Yes. We're a little part of that.
Yeah, and you guys, yes, but the thing is, Narberth has skin in that game because Narberth put up money equivalent to the distance that it covers in Narberth. So,
was that grant obtained?
I believe it was either submitted or it was successfully.
It was selected, but is it a federal grant?
It is a federal grant.
So we'll see.
We'll see.
We shall see how it goes. But it was selected.
The other thing I think would unlock Montgomery Avenue is a phone call from one of our politicians to the Ward Commissioner of Lower Marion Township.
My understanding is there have been some discussions, but yes, we need to make overtures to leadership of the, Lower Merion and particularly the elected officials, but,
And maybe a state rep or senator could make that happen, I don't know. But really, there's all kinds of excuses, wait for this plan, wait for that plan, this, that, the other. It's when the elected officials decide it's their priority, that is when it won't happen.
Are we also waiting on the active transportation plan, like final documents? Montgomery Ave part of
I mean,
that?
by the time like everything becomes vested in the project, the ATP will hopefully be done. But also, our boss is also the chair for the Montgomery County, the Lower Merion Planning Commission. So,
who's that?
Scott.
He's not the chair of the planning commission over there?
I thought he was at least.
Okay.
What's his name, Scott?
France.
These guys are taking over between the staff on the different planning commissions.
It's the best way to know what's happening.
Okay. All right, any further discussion? Motion, will someone make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to further note it's 8:10 per motion to adjourn.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? We are adjourned.